Hi, this is Matt in London. The topic of this video is, did I just say London? No, it's not London. This is Tokyo. This is really Tokyo. So hi, this is Matt in Tokyo. The topic of this video is methodologies, software methodologies. So I know it sounds fascinating, sounds riveting, but it's actually a subject I am interested in. So I'm going to talk about Scrum, I'm going to talk about Kanban, I'm going to talk about Agile methodologies. That's the topic. That's the topic of this video. From Shibuya in Tokyo. Merise, ISO 9000, CMMI, Sarbanes-Oxley. So software methodologies for the software development process. Well, we had in the 1990s we had Merise, we had ISO 9001, we had what was that, CMMI, that still exists. We used SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. But really there's only one that I think stands out, and this is the family of Agile methodologies. And I really think that stands out. Why? Because it's the only one that really works without having to add stuff to the process, but actually removing things from the process and then focusing on the essentials. And what it does is that that's absolutely important, it reduces time to feedback. So the time between design and hitting reality, this is what it does, it reduces this time to feedback. Hey! And I don't know who you are, who are you?
Konnichiwa, very good, thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome, I'm fine. Reducing time to feedback, how does it work in practice? Well, in practice, typically you're producing software and you're going to, instead of delivering a piece of functionality, a massive project in 6 months or a year, what you're going to do is that you're going to deliver a little additional piece of functionality every month. That means that the amount of situations where your users will be able to give feedback will be greater. Every month you're going to add a little piece of software. So, for instance, the first month you may deliver a read-only version of your website. The next month you may add a little function that allows you to edit something. The third month you may add a finer list of permissions. The fourth month maybe you can add a resilience functionality to your project. Well, you're doing that progressively. So why is it so difficult? Why doesn't everyone reduce the fixed cost this way? If it's so great, why can't every company just do that? Well, it is actually complicated, it is more complex, because there is a problem of fixed cost. There is this issue related to the fact that the fixed costs in the software delivery process are going to be setting up the testing environment, setting up the database, gathering the users for the user acceptance testing, the admin associated with change control. All those things are fixed costs. And obviously the intuitive idea to reduce them is to say, okay, I've got those costs, how will I reduce the impact? Well, okay, I'm going to stuff my release with as many features as I can. And this is a traditional way of looking at it. But this is not, I don't think this is the best way to look at things, because this just increases heaviness, this increases rigidity. What you want to do is to focus on each one of those costs, okay? The testing, user accepted testing, the admin associated with change control, focus on those costs and try and reduce them to be eventually in a position where you can increase your cadence of delivery. So what is Scrum, and how do you achieve this iteration thing? How do you deliver something iteratively in small chunks? So Scrum is one of many ways of doing it. There is another one called XP, which is extreme programming. It's another set of practices. So Scrum is going to be a set of rituals. It's almost rituals. It's very well defined. It's very well oiled. And really, what you're going to do is that you're going to define iterations. So you've got fixed release slots. And then inside each iteration, you say, okay, I'm going to stuff that amount of features into this particular iteration. And the scope is variable, but the dates are not. That's important. Typically, at the beginning of the iteration, you're going to have a planning phase during this planning phase, you choose how many pieces of functionality will go into the release. And the way you do that is that you cut down your features into very small chunks called user stories. So what is a user story? A user story is going to be a very small piece of functionality that makes sense to the user and that adds value to the user. So for instance, I'm going to add a menu to my application. That could be a user story. It is as small as possible. It's small enough so that you can fit many user stories inside the release. That's important because you want this level of granularity to be able to fine-tune your capacity and how many things you can put into a release. So when you're doing this planning phase, you're planning how many user stories you put into a release, and in order to do that, you're going to use story points. I'll come back to that later. Once you've done that, once you've done the planning, well, you're ready to start. You're ready to start your work. So you start coding, and now this is the sprint. This is what actually the word sprint is used for. It's for this coding phase, where developers scramble to code the user stories before the deadline. And when the deadline is reached, typically you're going to have a user demo. So you're going to show the new functionality to the users, get some feedback during UAT, fine-tune things here and there, and then go live, go to production, do the final release. And then that's it. This is the end of the iteration, and this is the start of a new one. So you're going to start a new planning phase, and so on and so on. You're going to go to your backlog of user stories, do some planning again, and start the next sprint. So what is Kanban? So when you hear about Scrum, you usually hear about Kanban at the same time. Although it's really it's very different, and the applications are completely opposite, and the origins are also very different. So why do people use Scrum? They use Scrums in the context of iterations and periodic releases. Kanban, that's used when you've got a conveyor belt of requirements, such as support, for instance. If you're doing support, you don't have releases. If you're doing support, you're getting requests. You have to respond to those requests in real time. And the way to work out what should I be doing next, well, Kanban helps you with that in a visual way. So that's it, that's what it is. Kanban is a visual way of helping you work out what you should be doing next. So how does it work in practice? Well, the simplest Kanban is really just a to-do list. If you can think of a to-do list as your simplest Kanban tool. It's a Kanban tool with one dimension. It's just, you can take a list of things to be done, you order it by priority if you want. It's a bit limited because all you can do is say, okay, this is to be done or it's been completed. And that's it, that's all you can do. You can't really, you can't do things like ordering by who's doing what, or ordering, or setting up different levels of priority, or representing what is currently on hold, what is currently waiting, what is currently started, ongoing, that's important, differentiating from what's already done. So then the Kanban board, for instance, is just going to be, you take a to-do list and then you add a dimension, okay? So you're going to create several columns. That's the simplest way of doing it. You get a column that contains the to-do, you got the started column, and then the done column. So that's one way of doing this. Okay? That's fairly simple. Then you can make it a bit more complex by adding another column called waiting or on hold. So this is for all the tasks that you can't really work on because you're waiting on somebody's input. You're waiting on someone else. So there's nothing you can do on that task, but that task has already been started. And you want to keep track of the fact that you're waiting on somebody else's input, so you put it inside this this column. It's not consuming any of your time, it's consuming some lead time overall, and you want to keep track of that. The ongoing column is important. It's actually, the ongoing column is really a started column. So you put there all the tasks that you've already started. Now, you can't really starting a task and not finishing it this is usually quite bad because the task itself hasn't got really any value until you've finished it. So there's no point starting plenty of things if you don't terminate them. Which is why it's good to have this started column, because you keep track of the things that you've started and you want to make sure that it doesn't go crazy. You want to make sure that you don't put too many things inside this column, because if it's the case, then that typically creates waste. Okay, you're wasting your time if you're just starting things and never finishing them. So this is another way of using that column. And then another thing that people do is that they divide the board horizontally, and you do one lane per person, for instance. So each person is going to have his lane. So this way you can visualize the work of the whole team now, and then you can also easily switch a task from one team member to another team member. You've got a nice visual representation of everything your team is currently working on. So that's it. That's one way of doing Kanban. Particularly in software, you would do it this way. This is because there's no very strict definition of Kanban. It's just a visual way of representing your work and deciding what works next. There are plenty of other ways of doing it. If you go to Starbucks and you see the employee writing down the name of the coffee you're going to have next on the cup, this is a Kanban system.